Gallagher.
And I was even thinking of that money you put in and onto the slot, like that game that they have nowadays. Spaceys. Ai te iwi. Our next speaker for this morning is Rangimarie Parata, Takurua, who needs no introduction. And she says, oh no, don't read that thing, it's too long. So I won't read all of it. But Rangimarie has a background in finance and investment, having worked both locally and internationally, as well as serving on a number of boards at an iwi, community and national level. Kapahaka is in her blood, and she's a founding member and current tutor of the Kapahaka Rōpū Te Ahi Kārua, which is now in its 26th year. In 2002, Te Ahi Kārua opened their own early childhood centre, Nōku Te Ao. And in 2014, the founding whānau of Te Ahi Kārua and Nōku Te Ao also established the world's first pā wānanga, Te Pā o Rākai Hautu, a unique 21st century pā wānanga learning village committed to educational success for the whole whānau, from early childhood, primary and secondary schooling to tertiary education, situated all on the one site. Te Pā o Rākai Hautu is the realisation of a whānau's combined vision to redefine how, where and when the best learning happens for our whānau. They are pushing the reset button on Māori educational underachievement because that's what you do when something is broken. E te iwi, ho mai te pakipaki, mo Rangimarie Parata Takurua.
Which is the clicker? Go back, kawai. O tēnā tātou katoa, ko aura ki te mauka, ko waitaki te awa, ko ngaitahu te iwi, ko Rangimarie Parata Takurua hau. I always get nervous before these things, no matter how many times I have to come up and stand in front of crowds. I think public speaking is probably the scariest thing in the world. So forgive me if I get a little bit nervy, but I brought some of our pununga along, our students from Te Pā o Rākai Hautu, to give me some of the courage that they're building as we go. I've been asked to share a little bit of our story, but to understand our journey, you need to understand our origins. And the story of Te Pā o Rākai Hautu begins and it ends with whānau. It's all about whānau. So let's start with my whānau, and that might help explain some of my neurosis that exists today. I grew up in the 60s, that's the Brady Bunch. In our house there were two things that were non-negotiable. That was education and kapahaka. My parents came from big families, my mum from a family of 19, and so she left school early to help look after all her brothers and sisters. They wanted more for us and decided education was the key to unlock the worlds for us. Both my parents were born in the same year, 1937. That's the year of the ox, for those of you that follow the Chinese horoscopes. And that means that they're hard workers by nature. I don't remember a time that I ever saw them idle. Even when they were sitting down, they were still plotting the next big kaupapa. The slightest hint of the other thing that they were always very good at was getting right inside our business. So there was always, where are you going? What are you doing? Have you done your homework? And the slightest hint of any trouble at school, my mum was down there. She was that parent that would turn up at the school to give them lessons on how to say our names. And they chose the biggest, longest, hardest names for all of us. So some of you know my whānau. Sorry, I've got to push that button at the same time. Some of you know my whānau, and our names go Ripika, Rangimarie, Taiawhio, Puameria, Manawanui. So the backdrop for her turning up at the school, this is in the early 70s, when there was no such thing as kohanga reo or kura kaupapa. There was no such thing as Māori TV. It was not something that you could turn on and watch kapahaka every day like our kids do today. That was the time when assimilation was in its full flight. So for my mum to turn up at school and start teaching them how to say our names took a lot of courage. They also hardwired into us not only the importance of knowing who we were and where we came from, but also a responsibility. That if you see something that needs to be done, get off your bum and do it. No one's going to do it for you. Which I think set us all up for the crazy busy lives we all lead today. Push this button, it's not going to go. Here we go. Education, as I said, was highly prized in our house. While other kids got bikes, we got books, which is why I still can't ride a bike. Mum has a brag wall on her at home with all our graduation photos on it. And our achievements were hers and Dad's. They did not come easy. They were there every step of the way, breaking down walls and silencing the naysayers. You heard the story of the deaf frog that got to the top of the hill because he couldn't hear all the people telling him he couldn't. They wanted us to go to university not just so that they could have their brag wall, but so that we could learn the big words, learn the games, play the games, and then figure out how to change the games. We didn't know that at the time, but I'm sure Dad is laughing up there. If you know my dad, he'll be chuckling. I remember telling him when I was off to Massey to do my business degree and thinking, yeah, I'm going to climb the big corporate ladder and I'll start my own business and I'm going to make lots of money. And he'll be laughing now because I always said, no, I'm not coming back to work for iwi. No money in iwi. So there you go. So yeah, I went off and I got my degree and I even had a taste of some of that big corporate world. But you couldn't help but come home and do what actually needs to be done. So my biggest accomplishment, I would say, to date is being on the board of two things, Te Pāorakai Hautu and Nōku Te Ao, neither of which are money spinners. So I wouldn't suggest it for a career move. This thing's not going to go for me. Kapahaka was the other non-negotiable in our house, so it's just what our whānau did. From a very young age, you can see, I learnt to follow my right hand. And it was through kapahaka that I learnt about hard work, discipline, commitment, and pure joy. And it continues to be a passion to this day. Kapahaka, for me, there's no greater joy than standing beside your daughter, your son, your nieces, your nephews on a stage and singing. I'm much happier in a group of 40 standing on a stage than I am standing here in front of you today talking like this. It's no surprise then that Te Pāorakai Hautu and Nōku Te Ao have their origins in a kapahaka. Te Ahi Kārua was started by a group of whānau over a whisky in an Irish bar in Christchurch 26 years ago. What started out as a group of 20-somethings just wanting to sing and dance together and drink lots has morphed into so much more. A baby boom in the ranks led to the establishment of our very own early childhood, Nōku Te Ao, which literally means the world is mine. It was a huge undertaking by a group of desperate housewives who just wanted everything, no compromise. Quality education, quality reo, quality facilities, quality kaiako. It certainly wasn't easy, and every barrier we could possibly hit, we hit. The ministry declined our first application for funding to build our own centre because we had made the mistake of getting up and starting before getting their permission. It was even suggested that we were middle-class Māori, so that really didn't represent real Māori. A flurry of letters to politicians resulted in Trevor Mallard, who was the minister of the time, personally delivering a cheque to Nōku Te Ao, which allowed us to build our own centre. Against all the odds, we got up and running. Our centre grew quickly, we have waiting lists, we even won some prizes. A bit like my cousin Maru, it was all a big surprise when we won prizes. Prime Minister's Excellence Award for Governance, that was even more hilarious because if you saw our board meetings, sitting around a kitchen table, laughing lots, eating lots, and getting the mahi done. We break all the rules. 16 years on, and we have a roll of over 80 under fives. We've opened our second centre, and under considerable pressure from the whānau, we decided to carry on up into the schooling system. In fact, what started out as a discussion about starting a primary school very quickly morphed into something so much more. After many late nights and a bit more hard liquor for courage, our whānau designed our fantasy of what school should have been. It started with not calling it a school. Te Pā o Rākau Hautu is a pā wānanga, an innovative 21st century learning wānanga, a learning village devoted to educational success for the whole whānau. In hindsight, the design process was an unbundling and deconstruction of an established structure that we are reassembled in newer and smarter, well, we hope it's smarter ways. Except we're drawing on our old ways to assemble something that we don't actually want to look or feel anything like school. We have 3 rules at Te Pā for our kaiarahi. They know they have permission to try everything to re-engage our whānau and raise achievement. The 3 rules are, as long as they don't break 3 things. Don't break the kids in the process of trying your newest, greatest idea. Don't break the law, because that will shut us down. And don't break the law, L-O-R-E, those tikanga, those kawa that are important to us. After that, they have full permission to try everything. In designing our village, we were actually just trying to solve a whole lot of problems. How do we raise achievement? How do we raise expectations? How do we re-engage whānau who have had bad experiences in school and learning? How do we reconnect whānau who've been disconnected from their marae and tūranga waiwai for generations? How do we make the whole learning experience more relevant for them? These problems are already well documented and manifest in the persistent underachievement of Māori students over more than 200 years. It was actually a little bit surprising when we started our journey to find that the research already exists and a whole lot of such solutions have already been documented. The stats for Māori educational achievement are appalling. If you look at this funnel, of 100 Māori kids coming into the system as new entrants, by NCA level 1, we've lost a third of them, we're down to 65. By NCA level 2, we've lost over a half, we're down to 48 still in the system. By NCA level 3, we're down to 24. That's a quarter of those 100 that came in. And if we're very lucky, 14 of those 100 might make it to university. That's the backdrop for why we needed to do something. Whānau engagement, or more accurately, disengagement is a problem, and often it is inherently implicated that whānau are the problem. In fact, schools are the problem, not whānau. I also believe whānau are the most underutilised asset we have in the education system, and we're tapping into it. Whānau engagement is a problem that is not hard to understand. If you didn't want to go to school when you were a kid, you're not likely to want to go when you're an adult. The guy here is affectionately known as Matua Keith Murphy, who's from Chatham Islands and Tuahiwi, and that's his son, Matakaya. I was talking to him the other day and he told me he left school when he was 15. He's at Te Pā every day with his son, working in our gardens, with a whole lot of other kids working beside him. Tauira, my husband, used to send some of our kids that needed a little bit of a tune-up out to work in the gardens with him. We had to find a new punishment because they enjoyed that too much. For us, the past provided all the clues we needed for the future. This has not been about inventing something new. It has been about restoring, reconnecting and reigniting things that have lied buried and lay dormant for far too long. We once were warriors, we once were navigators, we once were astrologists, we once were gardeners. We landed on a model that is deep in our DNA, a pā, a village dedicated to giving life to learning, a place where the whole whānau can learn side by side, where the village looks after all our tamariki, a place where our language, our values live, where our kids get to be Māori all day and not have to leave it at the gate, where we grow pā kids who can swing a tea towel, crack level 3 chemistry, and bust out a haka just because. Where we produce pā kids as adept with a poi and a patu as a pen, as comfortable at a board table as a marae kitchen table. Restoring our culture and identity is foundational to Māori succeeding in the education system, in our view. We're not teaching our kids their culture, we're living it. We want to reconnect our whānau to our places, our people, our stories, by retracing the footsteps of Rākai Hautu, who carved out the lakes and rivers throughout this island. This week we've got a group of our students up at the first set of lakes that he dug out, Rotorua and Rotoiti and Nelson Lakes. Our kids progressively, while they're at Te Pā, will move across all those lakes, across this island. Place-based learning means our kids are out and about almost every week on our whenua, on our marae and our water. Those places are valid classrooms for us. Our kids are often seen in Rapaki climbing tamatia or doing marakai, at taumatu gathering raupo to build their mokahi, or at O'Kane's Bay helping prep hangi for the Waitangi Day. I don't know about you, but I took history at school, and there's very little that I can actually remember. What I do remember quite vividly is standing at Parihaka with some of these students that are sitting here right now, who we took up there, and we stood in Parihaka facing the little hill where the troops sat ready to sack a village, and we heard the stories of Parihaka. More importantly, we felt the stories of Parihaka. It's something I'll never forget, and neither will these students. There are no laws saying learning should be boring, so kinesthetic learning is about learning by doing. Our curriculum is designed to engage all the senses. It's very kinesthetic in nature, recognising our tamariki tend to learn better when they're doing something. How about this for science? Our students and their parents stayed at the taumatu, catching tuna and te kete o Rākai Hautu, and learning about mahinga kai by doing it. These kids already know more about our places than I do. They don't need to Google Rākai Hautu to find out who he was or where he went and what he did, like I did. Kinesthetic learning also means how kids feel deeply affects their learning, which is why we have worked hard to create warm, bright, inviting learning environments that our kids want to come into, and only hire people who genuinely love kids. Radical idea for schools. We know if you surround them with people who genuinely love and care for them as opposed to scare them, if you make their classrooms bright, happy, and more like a home than a classroom, if everywhere they look they see their culture, their language and their stories reflected back at them, if learning on our whenua, our moana and our marae is legitimised and normalised, if you feed their passions every day, if they're allowed to explore, make mistakes, be an active participant in designing their own learning pathways, then in an incredibly short space of time, you start to see eyes lighting up where there was previously vacancy and distrust. You start to hear voices from kids who were previously silent. And you start to feel true joy and excitement as the kids run into Te Pā every day and cry when they leave. That's the goal. We want to reignite a passion for learning in our kids, where our kids get to experience lots and lots until they find their thing, their passion. We have something we call hautututanga. In Te Pā, we encourage hautututanga. We want them to be mischief and curious until they grow up to this age. No. Not trying to encourage. And while we're talking about passion, it's never too early to start growing kapahaka divas. So we have 3 kapahaka teams at Te Pā, starting from our babies in Puna Hawaitu, to our middle school, Puna Waimarie and Karikari, who are now getting ready to represent Waitaha at the next national competitions in Hamilton. It'll be the first time Waitaha is represented at this competition, so it's a major accomplishment. for Waitaha and also for our kids, the majority of whom had not done kapahaka until they came to Te Pā. And then there's our senior students, Te Waka Uruao, who are getting ready for regionals. Kapahaka is a big feature at Te Pā and we don't apologise for it. There's no surprises there. What better vehicle to celebrate our culture than kapahaka? It is not optional at Te Pā. Cultural C sits right up there with literacy and numeracy. And if you want to see whānau engagement, you should see how many whānau turn up to help making uniforms, cook, help with the tutoring, fundraising, composing, singing. Behind every one of these three teams, there's an even bigger parent support team. So we're pushing the reset button on education, because that's what you do when something's broken. And the reset that we're aiming for is to normalise Māori succeeding. We want Te Pā to be a place where our marae and our whenua and our mona are our classrooms, where learning's exciting, relevant and even fun, where our tamariki choose to speak Māori in the playground and where our parents and grandparents can learn us alongside their tamariki. Where mātauranga Māori is central, where academic, cultural and sporting brilliance is the norm. Where our values, tika pono aroha, are embedded in all that we do every day. In our curriculum, our behaviour management systems, the way we treat each other, the way we engage with our whānau, the decisions we make are all driven by these values. And at Te Pā, we want it to be normal that, yes, you can do kapahaka and you can go to university. Where you can take out a decile 10 school in the finals in their basketball. They'd never heard of Te Pā Rakai Hautu until that day. Where you can graduate after 13 years of school. How long do our kids have to stay in a system that can let them leave after 11 years, 12 years, 13 years with nothing? That is ridiculous. We have the opportunity at Te Pā, because we have them from early childhood, to nurture these kids from 0 to the time they're leaving us, 18. We had our first graduates last year at Onuku. We took them back out to Onuku where Rakai Hautu lay his core to rest. And in that 18 years that we have these kids, if we can't set them on a pathway, we should be shot. If we were a business, you'd be closed down the way a lot of our schools are performing or not performing. We use the stories of our ancestor Rakai Hautu to determine our graduate profile. He lit the fires of occupation in Tuaipōnam and with his core carved out our lakes and rivers. So we want to produce the next generation of navigators, explorers, leaders, equipped with the skills and tools to carve out new worlds for us. Rakai Hautu did this when he shaped the island that we live in with his core. And we want our graduates to be able to think, act and lead as a rangatira. We've taken a long-term approach to fixing a problem that has persisted for many generations. Long-term means we're starting from the babies. We're now getting ready to really shift the game by designing and building a fully self-sustaining pā wānanga that stretches well beyond school as we knew it. On our pā, we have whānau enterprise. Here are two of our young mamas who started their own businesses and they are based at Te Pā. If anyone's looking for a mirimiri, I can highly recommend Kori. And Savannah, who runs our after school and holiday program with great care at Te Pā. In our full pā wānanga, we plan to go well beyond education to incorporate whānau health and community services and more whānau enterprise, so that ultimately we become fully self-sustaining. It's a big job, but one the whānau is all up for. So watch this space. It's coming to you in Christchurch very soon. I'd like to leave you today with this quote, which seems to be the story of my life. To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you like everyone else is the greatest battle you will ever fight. It is a fight my parents were prepared to fight for me, It is a fight we are prepared to fight for our kids. The right to be who we are, to reawaken the Māori spirit within, to move beyond the hui to dui, to pick up the core like Rakai Hautu and carve out a whole new world for our next generation of leaders, navigators and explorers. Nō reira, tēnā tātou katoa.